I come from Puerto Rico. I just live in Philadelphia. I always have to make that calendar. I'm sorry. It's just like, you know, our country is a colony, so I just want to always to make that point. I'm glad that Compañero Larry came first because it's the crisis is something that is so global, and it's so true that I come from healthcare, right? And it's what you mentioned, you know, treating this and treating this in healthcare. We said is symptomatic relief. You know, we treat the headache, we treat the fever, and there is this acutely ill patient with a horrible infection. We treat the, you know, the fever, the headaches, but don't give them enough antibiotics, which will treat the illness. And the illness is really capitalism. You know, we treat healthcare, which are important. I mean, not to say you have to cure the headache, you have to, you know, reduce the fever and all that, but if you don't deal with the illness, the patient will collapse. That means if we leave capitalism, it will just turn. And that made me, I was not going to bring this, but your, your words prompted me to, and because I just came from Colombia, I went to a meeting with the Federación Sindical Mundial, World Federation of Trade Unions, which is a pro-socialist, class-based unions, and a very good movement, which I'll explain at the end, which is Marcha Patriótica. It's a really new, exciting movement in Colombia. They both held a meeting, and they characterized two main points on the global crisis, and that's why I wanted to bring. They not only call it, you know, what Compañero Larry mentioned, it's a global crisis, you know, it's a structural crisis, but they say it's a crisis of civilization. So it's like we have no other option but to fight, and with new ways of fighting.
Absolutely.
And the 2 points that they mentioned, it was the energy crisis, because of the transnational, particularly in the Latin American countries, you know, the attack on mining and energy and oil companies that pollute the environment. They have polluted the environment so much that, you know, you might get a lot of money, but if you cannot breathe, you know. And right now, you know what, 85% of all cancers are environmental. You know, they do all this research on genetics and all that, but 85% of what's killing people of cancer is what you eat, what you dress, what you breathe. That is very important. That environment can kill you if you don't deal with it, and it's something that it's and the other one is the alimentaria, the food crisis. That there is no food sovereignty because all the transnational like Monsanto are so I think those two aspects are very, very important because it means the survival. If you cannot eat, and if you cannot breathe, and if you cannot drink water, safe water, you die. So it comes to those basics. Anyway, I'm going to start. I don't have like a formal presentation, and I just have some points that I wanted to raise about Latin America because it's such a broad topic. And I want to ask, who consider yourself progressive? Only half? So the rest of you are not progressive, so you are what? Okay, now I was going to the more common denominator to the, who considers yourself socialist? Okay, that's better. Who consider yourself revolutionary socialist? Better. Who consider yourself as a member or a prospective member of Workers' World Party? Got you, right?
Yeah. No, I didn't know about the lead up.
Yeah, you lead to that. That's how we develop. Well, I want to raise the importance for us as revolutionary, and this better don't get, because that's where the points are digitized. I don't have it written. Why is Latin America important for revolutionary? And Compañero Larry mentioned about the internationalism. And it's so crucial that now it's a global struggle. It's a class struggle. It's class from Colombia to Puerto Rico to the United States, because it's only 1% globally. And the 99%, quote unquote, using the occupied wording, it's all of us together. So I just wanted to raise some of the points as revolutionaries. Why should we look up at Latin America? What should we consider? How can we analyze what's happening in Latin America? There are many things happening. They say there's a left, some say there's a socialist countries in Latin America. What is true of that? What is the 21st century socialism that people talk about? How do we relate to that? How are we going to not only give solidarity, but how are we going to connect with the workers? Right now in Colombia, there is, from the General Motors, there are workers who are suing the libs because the General Motors in Colombia doesn't allow them, because they were injured at work, they were fired. And they have been waging for months and months and months struggle. GM doesn't want to talk with them. They left the negotiation table. They sued the libs. 4 of them are, and 3 of them are joining. And they say if the GM doesn't go back to the table, more workers will die. So this is GM. This is a company from here. You know, these are workers that are workers from Detroit, from anywhere in the United States, and worldwide, because now that's what globalization means. It's not only in Detroit, it's everywhere. And I just wanted, because I know we have a high-tech, low-pay by our founder, Sam Marcy, and I think of all the books on the table, if you can buy only one, buy high-tech, low-pay. And the reason is that it puts, how do you put into practice, how do you analyze in a Marxist way what is happening? And I think Sam Marcy with high-tech, low-pay has been the perfect example. That was written, what, 85? Mm-hmm. 85, and he's talking like things that happened yesterday. You know, with the high-tech, with the whole development of high-tech and intensification of labor, and what we're here now, this permanent overproduction. And I think that was the perfect example. I think that is how we have to view the Communist Manifesto and all the classes as guidelines, not to put, well, this doesn't conform to what the Communist Manifesto does, but it's a guideline of examining what is happening now. So, in that way, what is happening in Latin America? Why should we know about Latin America? What is the role of the United States? What are the tasks of the working people in the United States towards our brothers and sisters in Latin America? And the most important thing, I'm going to go quickly, because it's hopefully we'll have a discussion, is that for a long time, actually, since the 19th century, with the Monroe Doctrine, Latin America was like the patio trasero, the backyard of the United States. All Latin America was pending on what the United States did. This is the first time that, as a whole, most, and I say most with some exceptions, most of Latin America are trying to withdraw from that dominance of the United States. They are putting together organizations without the United States that try to put together, to integrate, and to really defend. Many countries didn't even trade with each other from Latin America to other Latin America. They traded with the United States. Now is the first time ever that, for example, Argentina and Venezuela are trading. That didn't happen before. Argentina traded with the United States, Venezuela traded with the United States, but not with each other. Now there is that is what integration means. I mean, this is just basic, but there is more. So that's the most important part is the anti-imperialist stand that the countries of Latin America have. That's fundamental. Be it socialist or not, that's at this point, not that it's irrelevant, but it's the less important because of all the history that had of dependence of the United States. This is the first time as a region it's getting independence from the United States. Not completely, but for the most part. I wanted to touch on basically also what is socialism of the 21st century? Any hand?
That's what Chavez calls what he's building in Venezuela.
Okay. Any other?
Reclaiming the means of production and putting back in the hands of the people.
Okay. Basically, that's, it was in a social forum, I think it was in 2005, that Chavez says for the first time, I am a socialist. And came out, really. And then he said, but not socialist, but socialist of the 21st century. Really, 21st century socialism means socialism after the breakup of the Soviet Union. That's basically what it means. With all the profound implication that means. And that means that there is no, like in Cuba, they had the backup of the Soviet Union. That doesn't happen now. So there is this lack of backup, of big backup in front of the imperialism of the United States with all the weapons that the United States. So these are states now that are trying to build socialism without a big backup. So there are many contradictions. There are some mistakes, and that's how revolutions also go, with back and forth and mistakes and steps forwards and step backwards. So basically, I just, we can discuss more, but the uprisings in Latin America, that has been very important because it's not, before we heard about the Communist Party of this country, the Communist Party of this other, and they were the sources of the uprisings in those countries. After so many dictatorships like Chile and Argentina that completely erased the communists and many had to exile, that was completely eliminated. So right now the people who are uprising are really campesinos, are indigenous, are Afro-Latinos. So it's a new layer of movement that it's not necessarily communist. They are not anti-communist for the most part, but they are not communist, and many of them do not have a party, don't have a vanguard party to direct a revolution towards the taking of the power. That's very important to know. Another thing that has to be differentiated, we talk about, well, there is this progressive president in this country, let's say Ecuador, or Venezuela, or Bolivia, or even Chile. Chile is a good example because it was a compañera who was the daughter of a political prisoner. She was very progressive. And she was, I think, was 4 or 5 years, whatever, 4 or 5 years in Chile. And she was progressive, but was she able to change anything? Because there was not a people's movement at that point that will really push whatever the president has. And it's not a president that is progressive or not that can make a transformation of the country. A president has to be a source of getting people to organize in order to have a change of the state. Many of them are progressive organizations, like she was in Chile. She was just administering the capitalist state. So just administering, she can do a little bit reform here and there, but there was not the aim of uniting people to have a movement that could get the transformation of the state. And that we have to differentiate. When we try to analyze each country, it's like, what is the movement from below? Is this president trying to organize in order to subvert, in order to change the system? Or is this just having a little bit reform here and there and leave the state intact, the bankers, the corporations, the transactions within the United States? If that seems the same, that is irrelevant. I mean, it's good that the people might have gained here and there, but that is very important when we think of Latin America. And that, for example, in Paraguay, that was an example. Lugo was just derrocado, coup d'etat. I couldn't say the derrocado. He was, there was a coup d'etat that got him out of Paraguay. In one day, he was just gone, quote unquote, legally unconstitutional. They use all these legalists that, you know, it happened here too. You know, they use this law or this name and suddenly it's legal to do the most outrageous thing against the people. But he was a progressive one, but he started making so many concessions to imperialism, to transnational corporation, that he weakened the support of the people who really backed him up. And that's why he was ousted. He didn't have, but now they are fighting back, the people, because they voted for him and they want him back. They want what they wanted in the first place, which was to change the state. So I think that also to differentiate the countries that have been, like Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia, Ecuador, Nicaragua, El Salvador to a lesser extent, and Honduras and Paraguay used to be with Honduras with Zelaya and Paraguay with Lugo, but after the coup, those countries turned around and now are pro-US countries that have been used, that are being used against the rest of the progressive movement. These pro-US countries we have to differentiate from these others that I mentioned, Cuba, etc., etc. And that is Mexico, Honduras and Paraguay, Chile, Colombia, and Panama. But on this, if Mexico, the whole global crisis that we're talking, it has also permeated all these countries. And Mexico is a perfect example because we have more immigrants from Mexico here than any other country immigrant, I think, unless the Filipinos are more in the West. But at least in the East Coast is the majority. And NAFTA, we know that destroyed the economy. And there was, you know, during NAFTA, there was the Chiapas, there was the Zapatista, but that kind of turned down. And that was not the whole country. But now this globalization and the attacks of the crisis and the attacks on education, and because now there is an attempt of privatized education all over, just like here, but in Mexico too. But in Mexico, there has sprung this wonderful movement of youth, mostly students, the Yo Soy 130, the I Am 132, that it has it started in the Mexico City and just have gone all over the country. And that has made, these are like millions of students and people now, unions and teachers and people and other organizations are joining the Yo Soy 132. And that is a big difference in Mexico. In Honduras and Paraguay, there is resistance from the coup that's still increasing. In Chile, the students, just 2 days ago, that the state started repressing students that were, again, demonstrated against privatization of school. In Colombia, what I mentioned, the Marcha Patriótica, which is patriotic march, is a movement that has been happening for several years, but now it launched this year in a kind of an explosive way, all the way in Colombia. And that is very important because Colombia is called like the Israel of Latin America. There are many bases, there are truths, it's horrible, the conditions, but it's a very repressive government. And now with Santos, which difference with Uribe, he comes from the oligarchy, so he has a kind of a more sophisticated discourse. So the United States just signed the free trade agreement with Colombia that has been stopped because of Uribe and the resilience and the struggle of the unions. But now with Santos, that didn't matter and was signed. So that's going to intensify the exploitation of workers in Colombia, and that is how the Marcha Patriótica sprung, and it's really an exciting movement. And then in Panama, the Nave Buglé people and workers of the construction of the Panama Canal, you say canal, the Panama Canal that have been in struggle, has been in strike. So there is a lot of movement, and there is also attempts to many of the movement come together, like the Federación, the World Federation of Trade Union and the Marcha Patriótica. They are trying to link with other countries. And lastly, I'm leaving tomorrow to Tijuana, where we're having a conference of Latin American, it starts at US-Cuba labor exchange to link workers from the United States with Cuba, and do it Tijuana because Cuban workers are not given visas to go to the United States. So Tijuana is close to San Diego. But now it's not only Cuba and the United States, but it's Ecuador, it's Venezuela, it's Colombia. So now it's like really Latin America and the United States, an attempt also of globalizing this struggle. So that's what's happening next. So I'm going to end this here, just kind of introduction of several points.